My name is Margaret, and for most of my adult life, I was a wife first, a mother second, and somewhere far down the list, myself. I married Robert when I was 24. He was 27. We met at a church picnic, which sounds sweet when I say it out loud. And it was sweet. Robert was a good man, quiet, steady, the kind of man who fixed things without being asked. The kind of man who always made sure the car had gas before a long trip. We were married for 38 years. He passed away from a heart attack on a Tuesday morning. He was in the kitchen. He had just made coffee. I was still upstairs getting dressed. By the time I came down, he was gone. That was 6 years ago. And for 6 years, I told myself the same thing every single day. That part of my life is over. I meant it when I said it. I was not being dramatic. I was not feeling sorry for myself. I just believed it. The way you believe the sky is blue or that winter comes after fall. It simply felt true. My daughter Carol would sometimes say things. Little hints. Mom, you should get out more. Or, my friend's father started going to a senior center and he loves it. I would smile and nod and then quietly change the subject. My neighbor Patricia had joined one of those online dating websites at 65. She showed me her profile one afternoon over coffee. I remember looking at her photo on the screen. She was smiling wide, wearing a bright blue blouse, and I felt happy for her, genuinely happy. But I also remember thinking, that is not for me. I had lived a full life. I had loved a man for nearly 4 decades. I had raised 2 children in a house full of noise and laundry and Saturday morning pancakes. I had done my part, and now in this quieter chapter, I was content, or so I told myself. The truth is, loneliness has a way of being very polite about announcing itself. It does not knock loudly on your door. It does not shake your shoulders and demand attention. It just sits with you, quietly. At the kitchen table in the morning when the coffee is too hot to drink and the house is too still. In the evenings when the television is on, but you are not really watching it. On Sunday afternoons that stretch out long and slow with nowhere to be. I kept busy. I volunteered at the library on Thursdays. I had my book club on the second Monday of every month. I visited Carol and her family on holidays. I called my son David every Sunday evening. I tended my small garden in the backyard. My life was full of things. But there is a difference between a life full of things and a life full of connection. I did not let myself think about that difference too often. It was Carol who suggested the community class. She had seen a flyer at her gym. A local community center was offering a watercolor painting class for adults. 6 weeks, every Wednesday evening, small group. You used to love painting, Mom, she said on the phone. Remember? You had all those little sketchbooks when we were kids. She was right. I had loved it once, before the business of life had quietly replaced it with other things. I signed up mostly to stop Carol from worrying about me. I want to be honest about that. I was not excited. I simply thought 6 Wednesday evenings, a quiet room, some paint and paper. Worse ways to spend a few hours. I did not expect anything beyond that. The first evening of class, I arrived a few minutes early. The room was bright, with long tables pushed together in a rectangle and small sets of watercolor paints laid out at each seat. There were maybe 10 people in the group, mostly women around my age, a younger woman who looked to be in her 40s, and one man sitting near the far end of the table, reading something on his phone. I sat down near the middle, set my purse on the floor, and looked at the blank white paper in front of me. The instructor was a cheerful young woman named Lily, who spoke with great enthusiasm about color and light and not being afraid to make mistakes. I liked her immediately. We spent that first evening just playing, mixing colors, letting the paint bleed across the paper. No pressure, Lily kept saying. Just see what happens. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed the feeling of a brush in my hand. At the end of class, while I was wrapping up my things, the man from the end of the table walked past me and paused. "Your colors were really beautiful," he said simply. I looked up, a little startled. He smiled, not a big performative smile, just a small, genuine one. Then he picked up his jacket from the back of a chair and walked out. I stood there for a moment, my brush still in my hand. And that was it. That was the whole thing. 11 words from a stranger. But that night, driving home alone in the dark, I noticed something. I was smiling. I could not remember the last time I had driven home smiling at nothing in particular. And somewhere in the quiet of the car, a thought appeared, soft and unexpected, like a first brushstroke on a white page. Maybe this chapter isn't over after all. I did not sleep well that night. Not because I was upset, not because anything was wrong. I just kept finding myself awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about nothing important. The painting class, the colors I had mixed, the way the blue had spread into the yellow without being asked. And yes, those 11 words. Your colors were really beautiful. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I was a 63-year-old woman lying awake in the dark over a passing comment from a stranger I did not even know the name of. I almost laughed at myself. Almost. But the feeling would not quite leave. It just sat there quietly in the room with me, the way feelings sometimes do when you are not ready to look at them directly. I fell asleep sometime after midnight, and when I woke up, the first thing I did was tell myself to forget about it. I was quite good at telling myself things like that. Wednesday came around again faster than I expected. I changed my blouse twice before leaving the house. I want to be honest about that too. The first one was fine, perfectly fine. A soft gray with small buttons down the front. But I switched to a dusty rose one instead, then stood in front of the mirror for a moment, feeling slightly foolish. "You are going to a painting class, Margaret," I told my reflection, "not a dinner party." I switched back to the gray, then left before I could change my mind again. His name was Edward. I learned that in the first 5 minutes of the second class, when Lily asked everyone to introduce themselves briefly before we began. Most people said their name and one small thing about why they had joined. The younger woman, whose name was Diane, said she needed a creative outlet after a stressful year at work. A woman named Helen said her granddaughter had inspired her. An older woman named Ruth said she had always wanted to try and figured she had run out of excuses. When it was his turn, the man from the end of the table looked up calmly and said his name was Edward. He had retired 2 years ago. His wife had passed away 3 years before that. He said painting was something she had always loved, and he thought it was time he understood why. The room was quiet for just a moment after he said it. Then Lily smiled warmly and moved on to the next person. But I noticed that several women in the room glanced at Edward with soft eyes. The kind of look you give someone when they have just shown you something real without meaning to. I looked down at my paper. We did not speak that evening, not directly. Lily had us working on simple landscapes, a horizon line, a wash of sky, the suggestion of trees in the distance. I focused on my painting. I was careful not to look toward the end of the table too often. But at one point, Lily walked around the room commenting on everyone's work. And when she stopped beside me, she said, "Margaret, look at how you handle soft edges. You have a very natural instinct for this." I felt pleased, quietly pleased, the way you feel when something you thought you had lost turns out to still be there. On my way out, I passed Edward near the door. He was pulling on his coat. "Nice work tonight," he said. Casual, easy, the way you might comment on the weather. "Thank you," I said. "Yours too." He nodded once. I walked to my car. Simple as that. But I noticed I was breathing a little differently than usual. Lighter somehow, and I was not entirely sure what to make of that. The weeks continued. Week 3, we painted still life, a simple arrangement of objects Lily had placed on a small table in the center of the room. A ceramic jug, 2 apples, a folded cloth. Nothing fancy. But I found myself completely absorbed in the light and shadow of it. The way the jug caught brightness on one side and fell into softness on the other. Somewhere around the middle of that evening, I realized I had not thought about my empty house once since I arrived. That was new. After class, a small group of us lingered a little longer than usual. Helen had brought homemade cookies wrapped in a cloth napkin, and Lily had made tea in the small corner kitchen. We stood around chatting loosely. Ruth was funny in a very dry way that made everyone laugh without expecting to. Diane talked about her daughter who had just started college. Edward stood slightly to the side, holding his tea with both hands, listening more than he spoke. I noticed he laughed genuinely when Ruth said something particularly sharp. Not a polite laugh, a real one. At some point he caught me looking. I looked away immediately. Back to my tea. My face felt warm. It was week 4 when things shifted, just slightly. We were packing up after class. The group had thinned out quickly that evening. Several people had to rush off. Within a few minutes, it was only Ruth, Edward, and me left in the room. Ruth announced cheerfully that her son was picking her up out front and disappeared through the door with her coat half on, waving behind her without turning around. She was that kind of woman. I adored her. And then it was just Edward and me in the bright, quiet room. He was cleaning a brush at the small sink near the window. I was putting the cap back on my paints. The silence was not uncomfortable. That surprised me. I had expected it to feel awkward. It did not. "You are getting very good at this," he said, without turning around. "I am just remembering," I said. "I used to paint a long time ago." "What made you stop?" I thought about it for a moment. Life, I suppose, the way life does. He nodded slowly, still looking at the brush in his hand. Yes, he said quietly, the way life does. There was something in his voice when he said it. Not sadness exactly, more like the kind of understanding that only comes from having actually lived through something. I zipped my bag closed. I'm glad I came back to it, I said. He turned then, just slightly, and looked at me with that same simple, genuine expression. So am I, he said. I was not entirely sure if he meant painting, and walking to my car that night in the cool, dark air, I realized I was not entirely sure I wanted to ask. I did not tell anyone about Edward, not Carol, not my friend Patricia, who would have made it into something bigger than it was before I even finished the sentence. Not even my sister Louise, who lived 2 states away and called me every Sunday morning without fail. There was nothing to tell, really. That is what I kept reminding myself. 2 older people in a painting class. Brief exchanges at the end of an evening. A few kind words over watercolors and tea. That was all it was. But I noticed things, small things. The way you notice a change in the weather before it actually arrives. I noticed I was sleeping a little better. I noticed the Wednesdays felt different from the other days of the week. I noticed I had started humming quietly to myself while making breakfast, which I had not done in years. I noticed the gray blouse stayed in the closet. I told myself none of it meant anything. I was not entirely convincing. It was a Thursday afternoon, the week after our quiet conversation in the empty classroom, when I ran into Edward at the grocery store. I almost did not see him. I was in the produce section trying to decide between 2 bunches of bananas with the focused seriousness that grocery shopping sometimes demands when you live alone. And then I looked up, and there he was, 2 aisles over, standing in front of the soup cans, reading the back of one with his reading glasses pushed low on his nose. For one brief, strange moment, I considered turning my cart in the other direction. Instead, I stood very still and waited to see if he would look up. He did. A look of genuine recognition crossed his face. Not the polite kind, the real kind. "Margaret," he said, walking over. "Small world." "Very small," I agreed. We stood there in the soft fluorescent light of the grocery store and talked for 20 minutes. I do not even know exactly what we talked about. Simple things. He mentioned he was trying to cook more at home since retiring, with mixed results. I laughed at that. He asked about my garden. I told him about the roses that had refused to bloom properly for 3 years running, and how I had finally given up and planted hydrangeas instead. He listened the way some people listen, like what you are saying is actually interesting to him, not waiting for his turn to speak, actually listening. When we finally said goodbye near the exit, he said, "See you Wednesday." "See you Wednesday," I said. I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine. Something was happening. I could feel it the way you feel a shift in the season. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet, undeniable turning. And for the first time, I did not immediately tell myself to forget about it. That Wednesday, Edward arrived a few minutes after me. He set his things down at the end of the table as usual. But partway through the class, when Lily rearranged our seating to encourage us to observe each other's techniques, he ended up 1 seat away from me. We painted side by side for the better part of an hour. He worked slowly and carefully. I noticed he was hard on himself when something did not come out the way he intended. He would look at his paper with a small frown and then try again quietly without complaint. There was something about that I recognized. That private determination. The refusal to make a fuss. At one point, our brushes reached for the water jar at the same time and nearly touched. We both pulled back. Both apologized at the same moment. Then both stopped. Then both smiled at the same time. Lily, passing behind us, said cheerfully, "Oh, good, you two are getting along." I felt the warmth rise in my face again. After class that evening, he asked if I would like to get coffee sometime. He said it simply, without drama or ceremony, the way you might ask someone if they had seen a particular film or if they knew a good hardware store in the area. Just a plain, honest question hanging in the air between us. I felt something move through me that I did not have a clean word for. Not quite fear, not quite excitement, something in between, something old and unfamiliar and very much alive. I said yes. I surprised myself with how quickly I said it. No hesitation, no careful consideration, just yes. He smiled. That small, real smile. We exchanged numbers in the parking lot like two people who had apparently decided, without making a formal announcement about it, that something was beginning. Driving home, the fear arrived. Not the fluttery, nervous feeling from before. This was quieter and heavier, the kind that settles in your chest and asks uncomfortable questions. What are you doing, Margaret, at your age? What would Robert think? That last one hit the hardest. I will not pretend otherwise. I sat with it for a long time that night. The house was quiet. I made chamomile tea and sat at the kitchen table and looked at the place where Robert used to sit across from me every morning for 38 years. I thought about him, really thought about him. Not the grief version of thinking where everything is soft and sad and golden. I thought about him honestly, the man he actually was, steady and good and quiet, a man who fixed things, a man who always made sure the car had gas, a man who, near the end, when he was not feeling well but did not yet know what it meant, had said to me one evening out of nowhere, the way he sometimes said important things, casually, without preparation, "I hope you don't spend the rest of your life just waiting, Maggie." I had not thought about that in years. I did not know why it came back to me so clearly right then. I sat with my tea until it went cold. Carol called the next morning, just her usual check-in. "How are you, Mom? How was painting class? Anything new?" I almost told her. I had the words ready. I could feel them right there waiting. Instead, I said, "Class was lovely. I think I'm getting better." "That's great, Mom," she said warmly. And then she told me about her youngest soccer game, and the conversation moved on. After I hung up, I sat for a moment in the quiet kitchen. I was not ready to share it yet, whatever it was. It felt too new, too fragile, like a first brushstroke on a clean white page that you are not yet sure about. You do not show someone a painting before you know what it is yet. You just keep going, carefully, and see what it becomes. The coffee was on a Saturday, a small cafe not far from the community center, his suggestion. I arrived 2 minutes early and sat by the window and watched the street outside and told myself to simply breathe. He arrived exactly on time. He was wearing a dark green jacket I had not seen before. He looked in the most ordinary and honest way, like a person who was glad to be there. He sat down across from me, and I felt it again, that feeling from the very first evening, that strange, quiet, fluttery nervousness, sitting across from a man at a small table, hands wrapped around a warm cup, not entirely sure what came next. 63 years old, and nervous. I almost could not believe it. But I was also, underneath the nervousness, something else entirely. I was present, fully, completely present, not thinking about the empty house, not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, just sitting in a warm cafe on a Saturday morning with the light coming through the window and a kind man across from me. And for the first time in a very long time, the present moment felt like somewhere I actually wanted to be. Part 4. We talked for 2 hours. I did not plan for 2 hours. I had told myself beforehand, 1 cup of coffee, maybe an hour, keep it light. A pleasant Saturday morning outing, nothing more. But the conversation did not behave itself according to my plan. We talked about our children. He had a son named Thomas who lived in Colorado and called every few days. I told him about Carol and David. He asked about my grandchildren, and I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I was perhaps a little too proud of. He laughed warmly and showed me one of his own. A small girl with enormous eyes and paint on her shirt. She has your instincts, I said without thinking. He looked at the photo again and smiled slowly. Maybe so. We talked about retirement, how strange it felt at first, that sudden stillness after decades of routine. He said the first 6 months he had not known what to do with himself. He had reorganized his garage 3 times. I laughed at that because I had done something similar, rearranged the kitchen cabinets so many times that Carol had stopped knowing where anything was. We talked about loss, not heavily, not with the weight that word sometimes carries, but honestly, the way 2 people can talk about hard things when they are no longer in the sharp middle of them. He talked about his wife, Dorothy, how she had loved music, how the house had felt profoundly silent after she was gone. Not just quiet, silent in a different way entirely. Finally, after all these years, great full blooms, deep red, more beautiful than I remembered them being. Edward said it just needed a little more attention than I had been giving it. I think he might have been talking about more than the garden. And I think, for the first time in a long time, I am ready to agree with him.